Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and Tour de Fleece 2023. We are now quite a fair bit into this month-long spin-along, and I hope that you're finding the energy and motivation to continue. I wanted to take a few minutes before I start spinning, before I started talking about the topic, to review with any new subscribers, any new viewers, a little bit about my channel and a little bit about me and my motivation as to making these videos. Actually, I think I'll go ahead and start spinning. I'm spinning the purple, the CVM that I over dyed purple, and I'm spinning it long draw, so very much the same method that you've been seeing me spin a few times during this Tour de Fleece. I'll pull out the topic here in just a minute as well. But I just wanted to review, and go, for anybody that's new who hasn't watched older videos, that in the for Tour de Fleece 2020, I decided to start making little videos. At that time they were really just short little videos highlighting some of what I was doing each day for Tour de Fleece. And I did that. I think I had one for every day that year, but they were very short, and at the most you saw the side of my face as I spun, and they didn't have any speaking. I definitely never looked at the camera and spoke directly. I started doing this as a way to help support my kids. My son was in the military in a country other than where I'm at. My daughter had started off the year 2020 in the Peace Corps in a different country, and but she had been evacuated, and so she was at home, and my son was away, and they were both feeling a lot of the strain of the isolation and recognizing a lot of their friends were experiencing that as well. So I started doing these videos as a way to support them if they wanted to also try to reach out through different social media avenues to help their friends. And they did. My daughter used a Facebook group, and my son, he also had a Facebook group that he shared videos on, and both of them in their own way tried to reach out to a larger community that, well, at that time we were a community of for a number of weeks, a community of in our own homes, and that was it. So I started these as a way to help support them and also help support other spinners and crafters who, like myself, couldn't get out and mingle as much. So that's where the vlog started. Now, before that, I'd started a blog post years ago. My kids kept telling me I needed to write down some of the things that I told them. And I told them they should write it down and record it. But I ended up having a blog that I created that kind of helped me just put some of the random thoughts that popped into my head at times down to where they were recorded. So when I started my my YouTube channel, there was already a Pioneer Lady, and I'd been Pioneer Lady on Ravelry since I first went on to Ravelry years and years and years ago, and I didn't want to go away from that because while it doesn't necessarily always fit me, it fits me probably better than some of the other. I think as I get older, I am a pioneer hippie. I don't know. So either way, I had the Pioneer Lady, and I kind of liked that. I liked that on Ravelry. I didn't want to change that. So what I did is I combined the two in order to have a unique name for YouTube. Yes, it's a mouthful. Pioneer Lady at Pithy Ponderings is a mouthful, but it does help people find me. And I guess that's what's important. And that's what I felt was important, especially, again, so YouTube was a wonderful way for me to make the videos available to my kids, because my daughter eventually returned to the Peace Corps. My son's still overseas. And YouTube was a way for me to make the videos available. Even my husband watches my videos probably more regularly than anyone else. It works for us. Well, I thought, if I'm sharing these things for my family, why not make them available for a wider audience as well, you know? So I just, even after the Tour de Fleece, the shorts, I started challenging myself to do a little bit more. Eventually, ended up here in front of the camera talking, and that's when it kind of started turning a little bit more into a podcast type, rather than just the vlogs. Now, initially, I had, one of the big things that came up is I have a lot of people that have known me at different times in my life that are no longer in the same location I am. You know, we made a major move from Colorado to Virginia a number of years ago. And I have people from my, you know, that ask me, oh, I wish you, or will say something like, oh, I wish you lived closer because then I'd have you teach me how to do this or this or this. So then I thought, well, this would be a great way for me to make some simple tutorials available in some of the crafts that I do. Never intending this channel to be a tutorial channel. As my son says, I need a cameraman if that's going to be the case. It's always been more about to inspire people rather than give step-by-step instructions. Although I have made available some patterns and some short videos on more of a step-by-step basis. They're starting points. And that's one of the things that I noticed, is that, at least at the time, it was not always the easiest to find very basic starting points. There's a ton of material out there once you know what you're doing, especially in the quilting world. But not always the step-by-step. And I have found some wonderful step-by-step instructions for very specific, but not really generic oftentimes. So I thought this is a good platform to put that out there. Little by little, though, the channel has become more of a podcast, meaning I sit down and I share with you whatever it is I'm doing during the week, usually every other week, so about twice a month. I share with you what I've been doing to hopefully maybe inspire you to get out your fiber and fabric and spend some time unwinding. So that's how it's developed. And usually there is some sort of kind of thought that just pops up. Sometimes I go into the video with a thought, like right now where I have notes. Sometimes I go into the video with a thought already planned. And sometimes I go into the video no idea whatsoever as to what the topic's going to be. And then I have the topic kind of come to me during the video. That's rather what happened at Christmas when I was doing the spin along. Every day I'd spin and I'd have something new to talk about. So that is why I do these, what I do. Now with Tour de Fleece, I wanted to do a daily spin along because I had done the daily spin along in December. I wanted to do a daily spin along because I know that, well, different parts of the world have different seasons at different times, you know. So I thought I would have a spin along for the winter in the Southern Hemisphere. I'm not sure how many people I have following from there, but it just seemed to, and where Tour de Fleece was in July, and I love doing Tour de Fleece, I thought this would be a good, you know, December and July option. With that being said, doing a daily vlog definitely is a bit of a strain. And I'm not just talking about a strain on me. I am sure for many of you that are watching, it's a little bit of a strain on you to try to watch each of my videos. So way I've tried to do this Tour de Fleece is to create a collection of videos that while they are Tour de Fleece, they could also be used as resources to watch at other times, to just have topics discussed that might answer some questions or inspire you when you are taking a dive into a new fiber, a new technique. And that's what it really comes down to. Inspiring you, giving you a starting point. There's tons of wonderful information out there and lots of people that you can connect with that can help you along your journey of spinning if you at least know where to start, if you know what terms to Google, you know. So that's kind of the idea behind this. With that in mind, let me go ahead and pull out today's topic before my hands turn too purple. There is lanolin still left in this, and so therefore, by just the sheer nature of some of the dye attached to the lanolin rather than the wool, I will get some color in my hands. But all right, so today's topic is natural versus man-made spinning fibers. And this is, I think, a topic that can cause a little confusion for some people, especially if they're starting to get into it. Biodegradable does not always mean that it's easy on the environment. And that's really important. When we're looking at natural fibers and man-made fibers, it's important to realize there are a lot of fibers out there that are kind of in that in-between. They're natural materials, but they've been processed by man in such a way as to make them easily spun, and it kind of takes them out of what we really think of natural, but it's not completely synthetic either. So, and some of them are more easy on the environment than others, and some of the processes of creating these fibers, some of the processes are easier on the environment and some are harder on the environment. So this is an important point that I wanted to make right from the beginning. Processing fibers, large or small batch, large or small scale, is labor intensive, and it can have an impact on the environment. Even when we are doing our processing of wool in our backyard type situation, we need to be aware of how we are having an impact on the environment. And there are friendlier ways to deal with it, and more environmentally friendly ways of doing it, and there are less environmentally friendly. And you, the individual, have to work through how you find the balance. Because at the end of the day, you are the one making the decision as to what you spin and how you process it and what the process is. We should always encourage manufacturing to be as environmentally friendly as possible. But we also have to recognize there will be variation in that. It's not it's not a one versus the other. There is a scale, I guess you could say. And each person has to decide for themselves where they are going to fit on that scale. Because otherwise, we limit ourselves. We limit the spinning community. We limit the fiber community. We need to encourage environmentally friendly processes, but at the same time, we need to allow for variation, because not everyone can process wool. Not everyone can process flax. Not everyone can wear everything that's out there. And so having a variety is a good thing, but we just need to individually make choices for ourselves. So One of the things that over the years I've seen debates on, discussion, and confusion surrounding is the terminology. I see sustainable, eco-friendly, green, low impact. These are all words that are used to talk about the way fibers are processed and the way they affect the environment. Initially, years ago especially, we heard a lot of talk about green this and green that. But then people started discovering that the label didn't really mean much. That some of the things that were labeled green were not so sustainable. That some of the things that were labeled green weren't exactly environmentally friendly. So we started seeing a move away from the terminology green and move into a big one is sustainable. Is the product easily sustainable? Is it something that can be regrown? And what is the impact that process of sourcing? What is the process? Or what is the impact that process has on the environment? So, one of the ways that I think a lot of people are trying to limit their impact. So when we get into, and I plan in the upcoming year to look at a bunch of different, and I'm going to call them, they're man-made fibers. So if I'm going to look into cellulose fibers, and when we look at cellulose fibers, so let's talk, okay. In the wool and all that, what we have is, we have wool. But then we also have superwash wool. And superwash wool, while it is wool, it's been through a process that sometimes is less environmentally friendly than we might realize. There are a couple different ways that superwash wool is created. Different companies have different ways of doing it, and there is controversy in some groups as to if it's harming the environment. So superwash wool, which is a natural product, all of a sudden falls into a category of being man-manipulated. So maybe that's what we could call it, man-manipulated. Well, everything's man-manipulated. The process of scouring wool in large scale has often been involving a lot of chemicals, as I've said before, to dissolve away the cellulose, the vegetable matter. So, man-manipulated, pretty much everything we spin is man-manipulated. Again, there is a scale as to how it impacts the environment. Alright, and also how it impacts mankind, because some of the process starts with high intense labor, and oftentimes low paid labor. So, if you are wanting to go down this track of understanding where your fiber comes from and limiting the footprint it has on the environment, you're going to find, in some cases you can find that information easily, and in some cases you're going to find that information harder. And simply because it's a plant-based fiber does not mean it is something that we would call environmentally friendly. Or it may be very sustainable because it's made out of something that we can grow really easily, but it may take a lot of water to do so. For instance, cotton. Cotton has been a controversial fiber for many reasons. Most recently, it is because it's a large water consumer. So that's why people have looked into other plants that we can, other traditional plants and other more modern take on plants that we can, in essence, use the byproduct of something else that we're growing. For instance, the one that comes to mind that is just phenomenal, it's not a plant-based. There are There is milk fiber that is made from milk proteins. There is pineapple fiber. There's just an endless. And so today is not about going over all the different cellulose. It's about understanding the difference between the man-made and the natural. And understanding that just because something starts out natural doesn't necessarily mean it falls into the category of environmentally friendly through the whole process. All right, but one of the best ways, if you are really trying to limit your footprint and you are trying to source materials that you feel more comfortable with, I recommend find local. Local to your area, local stores that have done the research. That's the big one. If you can't find a local producer, maybe you can at least find a local seller, retailer, who has done the research for you. So look local to see if you can find at least more information about the fibers that you're spinning. Also, look for reputable and knowledgeable sources, whether it's local or whether it is online. There are research groups. There are I was looking online. So I've mentioned it before. I know I'm not sponsored. I love the Woolery because they have been growing with the need. I have purple fuzz on my shoulder. Oh my goodness. They have been expanding their supplies and also the knowledge that they provide. And one of the things I found really interesting when I was looking into the cellulose-based fibers is that they had information sheets, and the information sheets actually told you where they were getting the information from. And it was for lack of a better term at this moment, maybe a research group or an educational-based group looking at the process and where the way the fibers were being developed. So doing a little research. Now, there's nothing wrong with you just spinning whatever lands in your lap either. There's no judgment. I am putting no judgment out there. What I'm trying to provide is simply a way for you, if this is something that is a concern for you, a way for you to understand more about the fibers you're spinning. Whether it is a natural fiber, as I said earlier on, whether it is a natural fiber or it is a man-manipulated natural fiber or it is a completely man-made fiber, there can be a purpose and value to having it in our spinning community, but there is also the potential that it can have less positive effect on nature, on the environment. But we weigh that, okay, against the need. For instance, when you're dealing with somebody with a lot of allergies, it is a nice thing to have options, other types of fibers. And so maybe the fiber that is best for them isn't necessarily on the top scale of eco-friendly, but at the same time, it's providing something, providing a valuable product for somebody who has a need for that valuable product. And I think that's what it comes down to. In the end, it's the judicious use of the world that we live in. It is the responsible and knowledgeable use of the things that we have supplied to us either by nature or by man. That's where the balance comes. That's where the value comes. That's where we should be placing our judgment. Because it would be lovely if we all simply didn't have allergies, didn't have physical limitations upon us, if we all had a wonderful utopian physical experience in life. And yes, I am fully aware of the connection between the less environmentally conscious world that we have moved out of, and how that world affects and has affected the health of us today. I'm aware of that. But with that being said, I can't change what has happened. I can try to make the best of what's happening today and hopefully make a better tomorrow. So, I'm not sure that was in my notes, but I think that that's the heart of this message. The heart of this discussion, and why there is even this discussion and this debate. Why we sit and talk about, well, what are we spinning today? And is it man-made, or is it natural, or where does it fall in the spectrum of, of the scale of man-modified? We talk about it because in the end, we are worried about the environment. We are worried about the health of those who live on this planet. We are worried about those kind of things. We do think about them. Some people think about them more frequently than others and in more depth, but leaving judgment aside, what we need to recognize is that we need to have a world in which we value what we have and value what we've learned, so that as we move forward, we become better. And that is about as political message as I'm going to get in these Unwinding with fiber and fabric. Even when I was doing my history blogs, as I was working on my master's degree, and in the years following it, even when I was doing those, I have always tried to keep my politics out of it, trying to keep the demonstrative out of it. I am out there in enough places. I think that I share enough of who I am with the world. But I don't want to ever seem like I'm judging a person, or certainly not condemning a person for their beliefs or their practices. To me, it comes down to trying to do as little harm as possible, trying to share knowledge as much as possible, and trying to find peace and joy in the journey. That is what, if nothing else, that is what I hope to share. And that, I hope, that is what I hope I will be remembered for, and not all the rest of the stuff. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up this this episode. I am so appreciative to every single one of you that have watched to the end. Because we are moving to the last third of this month and this spin along, viewership numbers drop, but the amount of time people watch the video increases with that. And I thank every single one of you that watched to the end, whether it's when I post the video or even months from now. I thank each and every one of you. You make this process worthwhile for me. All right, well, I will see you again tomorrow. Until then, happy spinning.